The night my promotion died, my name was on a joke I didn't write. On the big screen in a glassy conference room, my dashboard loaded with test data called Dad Jokes a 111 and a note that looked like I'd left it there myself. Executives turned their heads like owls. Someone laughed the way people laugh when they don't know where to look. By the end of the week, a family friend who called himself a recruiter couldn't get past campus security, my wife didn't have the title she'd been handed, and I had something better than a promotion. I'm Caleb, 39, when this started. I led product for a flagship initiative at a large tech company in Austin with a name that sounds like a shoe brand and a spaceship at the same time. We'll call it Silver Peak. If you've ever eaten tacos at midnight on South Congress and watched electric scooters try to act like cars, that's my city. I loved the work the way a builder loves a clean cut. You show up, you stack the decisions, you make a thing that holds weight. At home, our fridge was a bulletin board for a marriage. Magnetized budget columns, notes about dog food and water filters. My wife, Avery, ran operations in another department. She's sharp, a natural at getting 8 stubborn calendars to meet in the same room. We met at a hackathon 7 years earlier, and for a while our fights were about whether to buy pour-over gear or an espresso machine. Then moving boxes became storage bins. Then the best thing we built together was silence that looked like rest from the outside. Silver Peak announced a new director-level role for a division that was about to double. It came with a seat in front of the board and the kind of compensation that makes you do math in the grocery store for fun. Officially, anyone could apply. Unofficially, everyone knew 3 people were in orbit. I was one of them. Avery wasn't in my chain, so we joked about it at first. The joke didn't travel. My project was called North Star. If it landed, it would change how our major clients read their own data. The demo had to be flawless, the kind of flawless that looks casual. We prepped for weeks. We wrote tests like they were prayers. I walked our team through 3 scenarios out of 5 where everything could go wrong and installed tripwires so we'd see it coming if it did. The week before we presented, Trent showed up. Trent Calloway had a laugh like a radio commercial. He was one of those recruiters who could make unemployment sound like a sabbatical. He was a friend of a friend. He'd done some contract work for us in the past when we needed a dozen engineers yesterday. He had a habit of showing up at company happy hours without technically working there. He wore blazers without socks, and his Instagram bio said connector. Avery introduced him like he was part of the family tree. "You remember Trent," she said, as if I'd forgotten the toothache. "He's helping with the director search. He knows the market." "We have an internal pipeline," I said, using my nice voice. "We also have a board that wants choices," Trent said, smooth. "Internal, external, hybrid. I'm just here to widen the net." He shook my hand like he owned grip. At home, the budget sheet on the fridge stared like a witness. We'd stopped arguing about coffee gear. We were arguing about nothing, which is worse. Sometimes I'd put my hand on the counter and feel how steady our quartz was compared to us. We occupied the same rooms like coworkers at 5 p.m., polite and drained. Avery started taking calls at odd hours. "Vendors," she said, shrugging, pulling on a sweater to step outside. "Trent's introducing me to a panel coach," she said on a Thursday, face open, eyes somewhere I couldn't reach. I told myself to focus on North Star. Executives can smell distraction like smoke. I built the demo to live on a clean data set with fake but realistic values. I checked the permissions twice, then a third time because my anxiety needed a hobby. We rehearsed with our VP and she nodded in that slow way she does when she sees a path through a forest. 2 days before the demo, a test alarm tripped in our pipeline at 1:30 a.m. I was asleep. My phone slept on the charger like an obedient dog. At 9,000, in the office, I opened the logs. There was a deployment choreographed to run only if 2 conditions were true. The first was a scheduled nightly build, which was ours. The second was a manual push to the demo environment. The second had fired from my account. When you've worked in tech long enough, you know how often impossible is just... We didn't think of that. Maybe I'd left a token where it didn't belong. Maybe I'd been sloppy. I breathed and did what you do. I checked the IP. It wasn't mine. It wasn't campus. It hit from a co-working space downtown where people wear headphones like armor. I killed the token and rebuilt the demo environment. I reset credentials like I was punishing them. That night, Avery went to interviews with external candidates. She wore a dress that looks good in restaurant lighting. "It's all boring," she said, grabbing her phone as it lit up with a name I didn't see. "Panels and homework, practice runs." "Sounds like a lot," I said. "It is," she said, and kissed my cheek with the polite certainty of an event coordinator. Demo day, the big screen woke up mean. Scenario 1 half loaded, the chart sputtered, and then we got the wrong table entirely. In bold, at the top, someone had written Dad Jokes EO11 as the dataset name. Below it, demo values leaned stupid. A city called Fired Up TX, a revenue line tied to Banana Stand. A column labeled No Mistakes Promise, the kind of adolescent joke our team would never leave in a build. My name sat on the commit history like a flag. "Is this supposed to be funny?" one director asked, eyebrows high enough to scrape the ceiling. "No," I said. The word tasted like copper. My VP's eyes slid to me like a question she wanted to be a command. "Caleb," she said evenly, "do we have a fallback?" "I can pivot to the backup scenario," I said. "Give me 60 seconds." 60 seconds is a lifetime when you're drowning. I yanked the dataset pointer back to the clean lake. The audience watched us breathe. 2 scenarios ran, 3 collapsed. We used words like beta and prototype and we'll tighten and thank you for your patience. The people who write the checks left thinking 2 things. I was sloppy or I was smug. Either way, I wasn't ready. When we shuffled out, my team stood in a clump, pretending not to blame me. My hands shook in a way I hadn't seen since my first release 10 years ago. The glass walls made the whole building feel like a zoo. Avery found me by the elevators. "Hey," she said, voice soft, face arranged for sympathy. "Rough room." "We hardened everything," I said. "This wasn't a bug. Someone pointed the demo to trash." "Maybe you missed a hook," she said gently. "It happens." "Avery," I said, because I needed someone to believe me the way I used to believe in myself. "It fired from my account." She stepped closer. "Then, take the hit. Own it. Clean it up. Leaders do that." The elevator arrived. She stepped in. "I've got a quick one with contractors," she said like an apology. The doors closed on a look I couldn't translate. That afternoon, the internal email went out. Our new director announcement. Avery's name. My screen turned to ice. The subject line had confetti emojis, the system inserts when you pick the right template. My VP called me into a room with a fake plant and a real problem. "You have a mess," she said. "Not a failure, a mess. I'm not going to tell you a story to make you feel better. You're smart. Fix your world. And if anything about this smells like more than a misfire, I need to know." "Okay," I said. "Also," she said, and this part she said like she wanted me to pass it to my bones, "go home tonight and drink water and sleep. No revenge commits, no angry audits. Rest, then look." I went home. The budget columns were still on the fridge, righteous in their boxes. A dog walker leaflet curled at the edge of the counter like it wanted to become something else. Avery's new title sat in my inbox next to an invite to a leadership reception with cocktails and a silver tray of buzzwords. I didn't RSVP. She breezed in at 9. "Congratulations," I said. "Thank you," she said, setting her purse down like it had done something impressive. "It's been a day." "Did you know?" I asked, the words small and even. "I had a good feeling," she said. "In that way we use when we want the truth to look like manners. It's not a competition, Caleb." "It is when the scoreboard is a pay stub," I said. My voice surprised me. It wasn't angry. It had no flavor. "I'm happy for you," I added, "because I am not a monster." She touched my shoulder and the gesture arrived from a distance. "I've got to meet contractors early," she said. "I'm going to turn in." My bones were humming. I ground coffee for the morning like I could grind this day into something usable. The shared iPad on the kitchen island lit. It was old and belonged to no one, which meant it belonged to the house, family calendar, grocery app. It was signed into a backup iCloud we created when we were young enough to think about shared podcasts as a personality. I didn't mean to look. My eyes mean to breathe. The screen woke to a message bubble still open. The name at the top said Trent. The blue bubbles below were Avery's side of a conversation. "Got Caleb's deck," hers read. "How would you frame the Q3 risks for the board?" "Keep it urgent but not panicked," Trent had replied. "And yes, drop the seed at 1 a.m. Looks like test if anyone asks." "Done," Avery wrote. "Leaving in 10. The timestamps sat like 2 fingerprints over a broken window. 12,053 a.m., 1:11:03 a.m. The same night the build did what it never should have done and wore my name for a crime I didn't commit. I took a photo of the screen with my phone. My hand shook hard enough to blur it. I took another, then another. The iPad went dark again like it needed a nap. I slept in a way that wasn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling and listened to the AC whisper. The things I could say lined up like soldiers in my throat. At dawn, I went for a run around the block to tell my body that life still happens in circles. Back home, I made coffee and waited for her. She came out in a blazer that said, "Director without being tacky." She looked like a magazine page for competence. Big day, she said, sipping from the mug I'd handed her. Don't be late to your contractors, I said. She nodded. Something in her face tightened like a knot in a rope. For a second, I thought she might say something honest and break whatever this was on the spot. She didn't. She kissed the air near my cheek and left, taking the keys I bought with a promise about weekends. What do you do when the person who knows your passwords uses your trust like a tool? I'll tell you what I did. I chose procedure. I chose the part of me that learned from outages and audits and chased down a memory leak at 2 in the morning because it was the right thing to do. I did not storm a restaurant. I did not write a text that would end up in court. I did not backdoor a laptop. I opened a new doc. I wrote a short summary. I attached the screenshot from the iPad. I pulled a copy of the server logs showing my user token making a manual push and highlighted the IP from the co-working space. I noted the timestamps and the calendar overlaps we could see in the corporate system. I wrote the words possible insider misuse and conflict of interest and external recruiter access overlap, even though those words tasted like I had swallowed a battery. I sent it to compliance and InfoSec. I key-c'd my VP. The subject line was dry enough to survive court. I closed my laptop and looked at the dog walker leaflet again. Then I went to the office and did the work in front of me. They called me in that afternoon. A woman from compliance named Sheila had a folder with tabs so straight you could shave with them. A man from InfoSec named Ben wore a polo and a look I recognized from mirrors. We appreciate the tone of your note, Sheila said. That matters. I appreciate rules, I said. Ben tapped his pen on the table. We see the manual push. We see the IP. We see your token. We also see that token got used from an unfamiliar machine with a user agent that doesn't match your laptop, he said, translating for a person like me who understands but doesn't want to brag about it. We can tell the difference between you and a puppet this time. Can you be sure? I asked. Sure enough to keep digging, he said. Do you have any other evidence? I slid the printouts across and watched their eyes hit the times, the names, the words that shouldn't be there. Sheila put one finger on the line that said, drop the seed at 1 a.m. This is between your wife and an external recruiter, she said. Yes, I said out loud for the first time. We're going to treat this as an ethics and security matter, she said. We're not your therapist. We're not marriage court. We're a company. We're going to do company things. Her voice had mercy in it that didn't try to steal the show. Good, I said. They move faster than I expected and slower than I wanted. That's how all proper investigations go. They pulled badge logs. They matched calendars with room bookings. They checked whether anyone forwarded internal docs to external accounts without a proper pathway. They asked IT to see if Avery's device had used any personal profiles to view files on the board portal. They pulled the list of contractor badges and laid it over the moments our logs got weird. They didn't tell me more than they had to. That was part of the mercy. At home, the fridge lists kept being the same shape. Avery worked late. Vendors, she said. Panel prep. A few times she came home smelling like a cologne I couldn't name. It wasn't ours. The dog, a borrowed one we watched sometimes for our neighbor, growled once at the door and then wagged anyway. 3 days after my note, the guards at Silver Peak's entrance stopped letting Trent in. Badge inactive is a dull phrase for a sharp moment. HR called Avery on a Friday for a clarification meeting. On Monday, she was relieved of duty pending committee review. The email that went out to leadership used words like ethics policy and preventing conflicts and protecting confidential materials. It did not use her name. She didn't come home that night. She stayed at a friend's or a hotel or the place where people go when their stories forget how to end. She stood in the kitchen the next morning, hair pulled back like a newscaster before a segment. You reported me, she said, not a question. I reported a problem, I said. It included you. What do you think this gets you? She asked, voice flat. Some prize for being righteous. It gets me out of a version of myself I don't want to be, I said. It gets the company out of a line it shouldn't cross. It gets us both the truth we kept avoiding, which is you've been with him for a while and you used my work like a tool. She folded her arms. Maybe if you hadn't made everything about North Star, I wouldn't have looked for someone who looked at me like I matter. I looked at you, I said. You looked through me. Maybe because you knew if you looked long enough, you'd see yourself. She flinched at that, small, like a muscle learning a new pain. I didn't do what you think, she said, but her eyes didn't come. Then tell it to the committee, I said. Don't tell it to the man whose name you used at 1013 a.m. She left. The door was gentle. The quiet that followed had weight. I pressed my palms on the counter and felt how steady quartz can be when the people aren't. Silver Peak moved. They cut Trent's contract. They issued a notice to all hiring partners reminding them of on-site conduct, confidentiality, and the line between networking and infiltration. They sent Avery's case to the HR committee. When they wrote the decision, they used language with tiny teeth. Ethical conflict. Undisclosed relationship with external vendor. Access overlap resulting in risk to company assets. She lost the title. She lost the bonus. They offered a separation or a non-manager role in a different division. She chose to leave. 3 weeks later, she updated her LinkedIn with a new job in town. Title lower by 1 rung. I stopped checking after that. Northstar didn't come back to me. That's not how trust works. You don't hand it to the same person and hope they learned a trick. I got a new project instead. Atlas. Clean slate in a dusty corner of the roadmap. I picked my team like I was picking a crew for a long hike. I took engineers who don't flinch at truths, designers who listen more than they talk, a data scientist who laughs with her whole mouth and writes queries that read like small poems. We met in a smaller room and made decisions that didn't make headlines but made sense. It felt like the quiet part of a song that never needed to be loud to be good. At home, I packed quietly. No shouting, no breaking plates. I folded t-shirts with care because I wanted to remember that my hands could still do careful things. I left the couch because it held too many ghosts. I left the budget magnets because they belonged to a different religion. I took the coffee grinder because quiet daily rituals are part of a spine. I signed a lease on a small place on East Riverside with a balcony big enough for a chair and a plant that can survive a forgetful owner. Avery texted twice. The first time, we should talk. The second, you win. That's not how any of this felt. I didn't win, I typed back. I chose not to lose myself. I didn't press send for an hour. When I did, she responded with nothing. Silence is its own punctuation. Sometimes I run past the Silver Peak campus at dusk. The glass glows like a promise it can't keep. I think about that moment when Dad Jokes A11 took the stage. I'm not proud of the heat that rose up in me. I am proud of what I did with it. I turned it into a process. I let the truth be heavier than my fear of being called petty. People survive betrayals that look like heart attacks. Mine look like a compliance report. I told my team a short version. We keep our environments clean, I said in a stand-up, voice steady. We keep our keys where they belong. We do not treat procedure like a hobby. Nobody asked for the long version. They didn't need it. What they needed was a leader who didn't use revenge as a strategy. A month later, Atlas shipped a small slice of real value to a client who needed it. No confetti, no all-hands announcement. We took a photo in the room and someone made a bad pun and we ate cupcakes from the bakery down the road. I went home to my balcony and watched the bats cut shapes into the evening. My phone buzzed with a congratulatory text from my VP that didn't include advice because I didn't need it that night. There are days I miss the years when Avery and I were a team in a way that didn't require a name tag to confirm it. There are nights I wake up and reach across a bed and remember that memory is a muscle that doesn't know about leases. When that happens, I make coffee. I water a plant that should have died and didn't. I read the email from a junior dev who transferred to Atlas last week because she heard we build with care. I let that be enough. People ask for a moral like they're ordering at a counter. I don't have a bumper sticker. I have a sentence I trust. Dignity is quieter than revenge and 10 times harder. I didn't get the promotion I wanted. I got something a promotion can't buy. When I had one more chance to either shout or stand still, I stood. 2 questions for you. If the person you loved used your work to cut you down, would you light a match or build a case? And what would that choice say about the person you want to be? When trust is broken in public, how do you repair your private sense of worth without borrowing it from applause? Like, comment, and subscribe for more stories like this one.